You're listening to The Rule of Law, the educational podcast sponsored by AllRize, where we focus on the intersection of law, technology, and storytelling. And now, here's your host, Lauren Round.
Welcome to Rule of Law. Today's guest is Erik Ruda, CEO of AllRize. In this episode, we'll be covering how law firms can leverage artificial intelligence to be more competitive, how not to use AI, and 3 things all law firms should do when implementing AI programs. Erik, welcome to the show. Where are you recording from today?
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How about you?
I'm in Savannah, Georgia, so not actually that far from Florida, but far from you because I always forget how long of a state Florida is.
Isn't there like a cold front going through that area in the Panhandle? I hear it's supposed to snow in the Panhandle of Florida over the coming days.
Yeah, we're under all the winter storm warnings, so hoping that the infrastructure can hold here. We're not really set up for it, so hoping for the best. Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to cover a lot of topics today related to AI, law firm competitiveness, best practices. But before we get to all that, first, if you wouldn't mind telling the audience just a little bit about yourself, your professional background, and how you got into the legal industry.
I've been in technology for my entire career, which spans a little over 25 years. Started out doing programming and ultimately for the majority, first half of my career, worked with Fortune 500 companies, doing large software implementations, ERP type implementations, data warehouses, analytics, and designing commercial software and bringing that to market, ultimately targeting the largest, multinational companies in the world. And I did that for a long time. And I have some family members that are lawyers and have their own practice. And over the years, I've helped on and off while I was still doing that. And ultimately transitioned getting into legal technology. It always fascinated me because I'm a big believer in most problems have already been solved in other industries, right? So I'm coming from the corporate world, and we're solving the largest and pressing issues of the time. And then I would go and work with a law firm and realize how far behind they are from a technology perspective. Look, understandably, based on the sensitive information and the importance of the legal work and the compliance and guidelines that need to be followed. But there was definitely a disconnect between what technology is available and what's actually being taken advantage of at law firms. And that really got me interested in the legal space. I realized how much we could help law firms, bringing some of that experience and some of that technology to the legal space.
And so was it kind of that realization how sort of far behind law firms were that you made the jump to starting AllRize?
It is actually. So I actually started working with law firms as a fractional CIO, CTO role and helping advise law firms. And through that work is actually where AllRize was born. AllRize is a legal practice management software built on Microsoft Dynamics 365 technology and Microsoft 365. It's completely integrated with Microsoft Copilot. So it was specifically designed so that as Microsoft is doing their, spending their billions of dollars on R&D, anything that comes out is automatically pretty much can be taken advantage of by anyone using the AllRize platform. So the goal there was kind of to future-proof the platform where, because Microsoft's coming out with new technology and new methodologies to use in their applications, And since we're on that, automatically, if you will, the platform is going to stay with the times, and you're kind of future proofing it from a technology perspective. So that was one of the core reasons why we built it on Microsoft 365 and Microsoft technology.
Yeah, it's crucial to have kind of that automatic update feature because law firms are notorious for being behind in technology. I mean, even today, some law firms use paper checks or didn't let their associates go home with laptops until COVID came around. So I think the industry is kind of notorious for lagging behind on the tech front. So speaking of, I think the legal industry does have that reputation for not adopting new technology, but then AI came around and, within just a couple of years of having these tools and LLMs out there, something like over 80% of legal professionals are using some form of AI in their firms today. And one of the reasons we wanted to have this conversation with you is because you do sit in such a unique seat, having worked with these lawyers and law firms on the tech side for so many years. And a lot of the conversation right now seems to be focused on how AI can kind of take away from lawyers and, minimize billable hours and might take away some of their value. But I know you and your company are really thinking about the other side of it and how law firms can use AI to their advantage and actually make themselves more competitive in their market. So let's start there. Kind of what are just some high level ways that law firms can leverage AI to make them more competitive rather than kind of take away from their billables and hiring?
That's a great question. And before we go there, I'll even touch on, going back to something you said around technology and some of and many law firms being laggards, if you will, and slower to adopt technology. There are a lot of law firms today who are using like on premise, meaning like they have servers at the firm and they're using technology back from probably the 90s, early 2000s, and that technology really doesn't work very well with AI. So, and we see that all the time. So there are law firms that really need to change their infrastructure, going to the cloud and really making sure that they're enabling their firm to take advantage of a lot of these AI, because it is going to be really important for law firms to be competitive. And I would say, law firms as well as other industries, but law firms specifically, because a lot of what law firms do is contract based, very heavy text based, unstructured data, which in the past has been very difficult to manipulate and deal with. But now with AI, it's becoming extremely easy to do some of the tasks that before it really only a human was able to do. Something I would also say in regard to AI, and I know a lot of the reasons why people are a little hesitant is because of security reasons. And they're warranted, right? Now you have ChatGPT and Claude and all these different platforms, and you really need to be careful not to put sensitive information out there, because once you put it out there you can't take it back, right? So a lot of these models are ultimately going to be trained on the data that people are putting into them. So I think that's something that more and more companies are starting to think about. I think Microsoft does an excellent job of that, pretty much because Microsoft has Copilot, and Copilot is specifically designed to work with the data that's already in Microsoft 365. I think maybe 80%, if not more, law firms use Microsoft 365. So all their documents and emails and everything, AIs can take advantage of that very easily and keep it contained in the Microsoft tenant, if you will.
Yeah, the security and confidentiality question is so interesting, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that as this stuff gets litigated and as the ABA and state bars kind of start weighing in on some of this stuff, because like you said, attorneys who haven't really thought through all of the implications there, just typing anything and everything into a large language model. And there's already questions raised about, is that breaking confidentiality? Like, is that privileged when it comes to depositions and discovery? So I think, a lot of those questions will get answered through litigation, sadly, as often as in our industry. But and that's a great segue into my next question, which was going to be, since you sit with so many firms and, have worked with large and small firms across all different practice areas, I think you have a unique view of how they are adopting some of these things. So, security and confidentiality are good examples of how not to use AI, or at least how to be really thoughtful about how you use it. And there are some other obvious examples, like the lawyers in New York who got in a ton of trouble for using Gen AI to write their briefs, and they had fake cases and stuff. So those are kind of obvious that we've watched them play out in the press. But working with firms, have you seen any other use cases for how not to use AI, or just other red flags and things to look out for?
Well, I think it's a little different way of leveraging technology than we're used to. It's almost like to really take advantage of AI and what its possibilities are. You kind of have to talk to it like a human, if you will, right? As if you have an associate or a law clerk there with you, and the smarter that these large language models are getting, before we know it, you're going to have AI, and it'll be like somebody even smarter than you sitting next to you that you can ask, opinions on things that you're working on. The one thing I would definitely say, and you just touched on that a little bit, is the one thing with the AI, you can't take what AI generates as fact, right? And a lot of it, the answers that are generated are very useful, and a lot of the times very accurate. But I'm sure you've heard people talk about hallucinations, and that's where if the large language model doesn't know the answer, sometimes we'll make it up, which I think is what you were referring to earlier, where there were people who were referencing case law that just didn't exist. So I think it goes to trust but verify when it comes to AI. It doesn't replace lawyers, obviously, but I think if we look at it like augmenting and having another member of the team helping work on your workflows and things, I think that's really the best way to take advantage of it currently.
Yeah, and I mean, there will always be, I think, such a human element. Lawyers know the personalities of specific judges and what rules of evidence they may be lax on, or what type of writing style judges like. And I guess it's possible that AI would know all of that one day, but it seems like we're perfecting that human element artificially. So speaking of, in talking about AI for law firms, we kind of hear a lot about the typical use cases, like using AI for doc review, using it for drafting the first draft of a contract or issue spotting, things like that. And that's all great and very cool. But you being in the unique position that you're in, I wanted to ask kind of what you envision 2, 3, 10 steps ahead of that, and any use cases you see in, the next 5 to 10 years, and where attorneys might expect AI to go next.
Good question. I think 2025 is going to be the year of AI agents. I know there's a lot of talk about that, and you have large language models that can be trained on pretty much everything on the internet, and that's what makes them really smart and be able to generate really good answers and ideas to questions. But Agents are more models that are trained specifically to do something. They're trained very well to do something very specific, right? So think of if you're, there's, let's say, a model trained on all of the court cases, that are available and public information that are actually legitimate real cases, or trained to do a specific task or a specific workflow, and that's what they're designed for, and that's what they do. And then you can also have these agents talk to each other, so ultimately really automating, if you think about it like having a team of people kind of working together on a problem or a workflow. And then in that case, AI will be a little bit more autonomous, if you will. Like right now, you're asking questions, right? Where it's ultimately going to go is that you can talk to an AI interface in human language, and it can go and do all kinds of tasks and automate those things and really produce a final work product that ultimately you're just looking over, reviewing what was created, and ultimately being able to leverage that as if you had a team of lawyers right there with you.
Yeah, I think another great use case is formatting for particular courts, because the Fourth Circuit has different formatting requirements for footnotes than the New York Supreme Court, than the Ninth Circuit, and where you have to have blank pages and where you have to have page numbers and all of that stuff is kind of a nightmare for humans to do, because it's so time consuming and human error and all of that stuff. So having an AI agent that's trained in the formatting for all the different particular courts, I think would be a godsend for a lot of these firms that are spending so much time on that right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that really the way that I look at it now is if you're doing something where you're thinking there's got to be a better way, or there's got to be an easier way to do this, I think that's prime for, to consider AI. AI should, at least right now, be able to take care of a lot of the manual kind of tedious things that you have to do often, and that will allow everyone to save time and really focus on more high value work, right, that really takes critical thinking and experience. And so I don't think AI is going to, at least not currently, replace the experience and that human element like you described, but it can definitely speed up and save a lot of, I would say, even paralegals and lawyers save a lot of time on specific tasks.
And I mean, especially for some of the young attorneys coming up, I mean, possibly we'll get to a place one day where law school grads don't have to spend 2 or 3 years stuck in a basement doing doc review before they kind of get any experience doing litigation. If AI can take over a lot of that doc review, they can just go straight to being trained by lawyers and get right into the courtroom. So I think for young associates especially, this is really relevant.
Let's pause for a moment to hear a word from our sponsor, AllRize.
Did you know there are more than 400,000 law firms in the U.S.? It's no surprise that nearly every firm is looking for a competitive edge. And that's why forward-looking firms are turning to the AllRize Law Practice Management Platform. AllRize is a modular, cloud-hosted software solution deeply integrated with Microsoft Dynamics technology and powered by Copilot AI. It can be deployed as a single, seamlessly integrated system, or you can start with just one module at a time, your choice. But if you want to streamline internal operations, boost staff productivity, deliver superior client service, and rise above all that competitive noise, then take a close look at AllRize. It's time to experience software innovation that enables practice excellence. Learn more at allrize.ai.
We're back. I want to wrap up with a question about implementation, because you've been helping firms with tech implementation for years, kind of across the board. So what are you seeing in how firms are adopting AI, and more importantly, how should they be implementing AI?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of different, scenarios across the board. Some are being I guess you could say, careless, and aren't really doing anything but specifically. But then people at the firm, paralegals and attorneys, are using ChatGPT or using different AI tools, because there is no policy to restrict it, and no guidelines on how to use it. And then we're seeing others that are completely shutting it down, and restricting access to a lot of the AI sites and tools. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you've heard of the concept of shadow IT. I've been in IT for many years, and what that actually refers to is users leveraging and installing applications on their work computers, and using it using applications that aren't really sanctioned by IT. And now there's a new term that's being coined called shadow AI, that I was reading about recently. And that's where, even though it's shut down, whether it's restricted, but not actually physically shut down, people are still using it secretly. And for those that are completely shutting it down and policing it, people are even bringing in their own devices, using AI, and then sending that work product over to their work computers. So it's definitely something that I don't think can be ignored. So it's increasingly important to define policies around the responsible use of these new technologies. I've seen some firms form committees to decide how to handle AI. We've seen a lot of firms starting to work with third-party vendors and service providers that can act as trusted advisors on the best way to responsibly introduce the use of AI at their firm. But if I was to give any kind of high-level advice, I would say before implementing AI, I would recommend at least keeping the following three things in mind. Make sure you have defined, clear use policies. Definitely consider security implications, and make sure that the staff and attorneys are trained on best practices on how to use these new technologies.
Awesome. And I think that is a perfect place to end three very practical and actionable items for the audience. So, Erik, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time and all of your insights.
Thanks for listening, and join us again for another Rule of Law podcast from AllRize.